Scholars of Swift, I hope your appetite for big learning includes new user interface concepts because that's what's on the menu as we polish up our Snacktacular app. We're going to learn how to create a color set that we can use to not only assign custom colors to UI elements, but also to easily change the color of multiple elements at once. We'll change the color of our navigation bar and our toolbars. We'll notice some buggy behavior in Xcode, and we'll learn what needs a workaround and what you can ignore. We'll learn how to set an app status bar. That's this area at the top of the device that includes the time, signal strength, and battery settings. We'll spiff up our buttons with SF symbol icons. We'll add a segmented control to a toolbar that's part of a navigation controller, something that's surprisingly tricky to do. And then we'll learn how to customize the font color and border of the segmented control for a more consistent user interface look. Let's learn. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a color that we can use throughout our app. And if we want to change that color, we'll be able to do that in just one place instead of having to go into each of the individual attributes of our various interface elements. And the way that we'll do that is first heading over to the Assets catalog. We'll click the plus sign down below and we'll select Color Set. Now we see this little square show up, but let's click on that square to select it and then expose the Attributes Inspector on the right-hand side. Now at the bottom we see what the color is initially. Now the default color that shows up is white. And while on computing there are a lot of different ways to express colors, perhaps the most common one is RGB, red, green, blue. That sounds a little weird because in elementary school you probably learned that red, yellow, and blue were the three primary colors, but it's RGB that can express any color that your computer can show. The default value that you see showing up here shows a floating point value between 0 and 1 for red, green, and blue. It's actually more common to see the number between 0 to 255 for each of those three elements. Now, if you knew what the numbers were supposed to be for R, G, and B, you could type those in, but I'll show you how you can use the color picker. Just click this button here that says Show Color Panel. That brings up the standard Mac color picker that we've used previously, and you can click on the eyedropper here and select any color that's currently being displayed on your Mac. So why don't we head up to our hamburger logo for Snacktacular. I'm going to choose this sort of medium orange color, and when I click on it, the RGB values are automatically filled in. I can see the square for the color set is orange, and I've got the precise color that I want. By the way, if you wanted to convert to the 0 to 255 method that I think is more common, you could actually go under Input Method and select 8-bit. It says 0 to 255 in there. You might also see the 2-character hexadecimal method at some places, and if you wanted to enter those in as values between 00 and FF, you could do that as well. So now that I've got the color that I want to use, I'll close my color picker. I'm going to click over here in the left-hand side and change the name from the default color to primary color. I'll use upper camel case, one word. And now I'm going to see that named color show up as an option wherever I can select colors inside of my app. Let's see this in action. So we'll click on Main Storyboard, and let's change the color of the navigation bar. So if we scroll over to the leftmost navigation controller, then click on the navigation bar, that's this area with the word title in it. In the Attributes Inspector, it says Navigation Bar. You can click on Bar Tint, and we see Primary Color is under Named Colors. Select that, and hey, not only do we change the navigation bar on this navigation controller, but we also change the navigation bar in all of the other view controllers that are associated with this nav controller. Cool. How come we're not showing it at the end, though? Well, that's because we've got the second navigation controller up here that isn't part of the original navigation controller stack, and we've got to set this color as well. But how do we fix that? Well, you can probably guess. Just click the navigation bar in this navigation controller, that's this area with the word title in it, and just as before, select Bar Tint and our primary color, this orange color. Nice. Now here's where named colors can be super useful. It's not uncommon for a developer to want to change the color scheme after you've started your work. Well, we can just go back and click on the Assets catalog, click the primary color, and then change the color attributes. I'm going to set red to 0 and green to 0, make this all blue. I'll slide the blue slider over to the right to make it really vivid. And then when I click back on Main Storyboard, hey, all of these primary colors are now blue. Nice. I'm going to go back, click on Show Panel, use my color picker, and go back to my original orange color. But you can see now how useful this is in your app. It also makes it easier for another team member, say a designer, to contribute changes. Well, what about the toolbar at the bottom? You change it the same way. I'll click the toolbar at the bottom of the leftmost navigation controller. Over here in the Attributes Inspector, I'll select Bar Tint, primary color, and I can see my toolbar is updated in all of the view controllers that are connected with this navigation controller. Then I'll do the exact same thing in this other view controller, but you'll notice another quirk in Xcode. This final toolbar didn't change colors. You see this one down here at the bottom of the spot detail view controller? Now there's nothing wrong with your settings, it's actually just a quirk in Interface Builder that it's not showing the color properly. We'll see everything is fine when we build and run. Now this problem has consistently showed up in the last few versions of Xcode. There's always a chance that since this video was recorded, the problem was solved and you're not seeing this problem at all, but do be aware if you see some quirkiness like this, it's not you, it's Xcode. Now, as you try to change things, you also want to pay attention to what you're really clicking on. So if I click down here in the toolbar, we can see up in the Attributes Inspector, I've actually clicked on the flexible spacebar button item, not on the toolbar. Even if I try to click off on the navigation controller and then back on this view controller here, I still see that the color doesn't change. I can click down here in the toolbar, the bar button item is selected, and I can try to change the tint, but that doesn't change anything either. But now look what happens when I build and run. When I click on a cell, I show segue, and hey, the toolbar is orange. Then if I click on cancel, go back and click on the plus sign, hey, even if I present modally, the toolbar is still orange. So this is working fine, just be aware of Xcode's quirks. So now our navigation bar and our toolbar are showing up in our primary color, that orange color, but we also want to get rid of any of the blue tint color that we're seeing in there. And even though we don't have a title in our navigation controller, you can see the default text for the title is black in the nav controller. Let's set that to white as well. So let me show you how we do that. So we'll click first on our navigation bar in our leftmost navigation controller. We're in the Attributes Inspector for the navigation bar, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change both of these title colors, both for the title text attribute and the large title text attribute, to white. By the way, even though I'm selecting the predefined white color, there's no reason why you couldn't go in and create another color set and use that named color in here too. So these arrows point to the changes I made both for the standard title text color and the large title text color. We see the placeholder word title in the navigation controller is now white. Then toward the bottom of the Attributes Inspector, you'll see that there's a tint attribute just below background, which is typically this medium blue, which is the default for iOS. I'm going to change that to white as well. Then I'll go to this other navigation controller, click on the navigation bar, then I'll set the title color to white and the large title color to white. And then down below, I'll change the tint attribute to white as well. Then in my leftmost navigation controller, I'm going to click on the toolbar and I can see that there's a blue tint color just below the background. I'm going to change that to white. And I'm going to speed up the video here because I built and run before I went ahead and also clicked on the toolbar for my other navigation controller and set the tint to white there. So now I'm going back and I'm changing that tint. Now that I've set that tint to white, I'll build and run, click on the plus button, and now the lookup button shows up in white. Perfect. Now I'd also like to change the color of this area at the top of my device. This area that shows the time, the signal strength, and the battery strength indicator is called the status bar. Now you can make this either black or white. Let's change this to white so that it matches the text color in our navigation bar and our toolbar. Now changing these values so that they're in white is actually referred to as the light content setting for the status bar style, and there are two things that we need to change. One is we need to go into our project settings, into targets and general, and we'll set the status bar style to light content. Then we also have to add a setting to info plist. So we'll add a row that says view controller based status bar appearance, and we'll set that to no. Again, kind of cryptic, but now that you know these two settings, it's really easy to do. So in the Project Navigator, I'll click on the topmost Snacktacular project icon. I'll make sure that Targets is selected and the General tab. Then I can just scroll down here to Status Bar Style and select Light Content. Step one down, let's head over to Info plist. I'll go down here into the last row and I'm going to click on the little circle with the plus sign. That's going to add another row, and then I'm going to type in capital V. The selection immediately jumps down to the selection we want. View controller based status bar appearance. Select this by pressing return. You can't see it all in here on my screen, but we can stretch out the column. There it is. Then go over into the value column and make sure that you select no. Now let's build and run and see how things look. And hey, look at that! Time, status indicators, battery life indicator, all in white. Excellent! Now we're going to add two buttons, one to create ratings and another to create photos, and we'll use Apple's SF Symbols font to include a star image on our reviews button and a camera image on our photos button. So I'm going to zoom in on Spot Detail View Controller, click on Library, search for a button, and then drag it over and place it just under the collection view on the right-hand side. Now with the button clicked, I'm going to go into the Attributes Inspector and I'm going to set the background color to our primary color. Then I'll set the tint to white. I'll also head up here to the text color and set that to white. I'll change the button title to Rating. I'll set the button font to System Bold 15, and I'm going to add another single space just in front of the word rating that's in our button title. That'll just give us more space in between the image I'm about to add and the word rating. Now down here in image, I'm going to type the word star. Everything that shows up is an image from the SF Symbols font that has the word star in it, and I'm going to choose this one that says star.fill. And because my tint is white, I can see that the filled in star shows up as white. And it looks like we just discovered another Xcode quirk. As soon as I selected an image, it looks like the font reset to the original regular system font at 18 points. We'll go and fix that in just a bit. But let's go down here and set constraints first. So we'll set the top constraint to 4, the right constraint to 8, and we'll also set width and height, width to 90 and height to 29. Add 4 constraints. Now let's go back and fix our font settings. So I'll click on the T and we'll keep it as system, but again, we'll set the style to bold and the size to 15. Then with the rating button clicked, I'm going to select Command D to duplicate and then drag this new button just to the left of the rating button. Then I'll change the title to space photo and I'll change the image to, if I type in camera, I can see that there's a camera.fill option. So I'll select that. Now when we duplicated the button, it didn't keep our constraints. So with the photo button selected, just to make sure that I don't have any constraints in here when I reset them, I'm going to select Resolve Auto Layout Issues. That's this little triangle button down here. Under Selected Views, I'll select Clear Constraints. Now I'll click Add New Constraints and Start Fresh. The top will be 4, the right will be 8, my width will be 90, and my height will be 29. Add 4 constraints. And these 2 buttons look great. Nice work. Now next up in the toolbar area of our spot list view controller, we're going to add this segmented control. It's going to have 3 segments or buttons within the control. This is going to be used to sort the spots or the restaurants in our table view. Now the thing that makes this tricky is it's tough to add a segmented control to a toolbar that's part of a navigation controller. But I'll show you how we do this. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to add another toolbar, add a segmented control to that. The segmented control will be embedded inside of a bar button item. Then we're going to drag the bar button item with the segmented control into the toolbar that's part of our navigation control. Sounds weird. It's kind of tricky. I'll show you how to do it and you'll be able to do it again if you ever need to add this to a future project. Now another set of hoops we'll have to jump through is if we want our segmented control to show the font in orange text color and white text color instead of black text color, which is the default, there's no setting on the storyboard for us to be able to make this change. So we'll have to do it through code. We'll use this little chunk of code that I'm showing you here. This will allow us not only to change the font, but also to put a nice white border around our segmented control. So let's polish this up. Now we eventually want this segmented control to be in the toolbar in our spot list view controller. That's this one right here with the table view. If you're curious why we need to go through these steps that I'm about to show you, well, you can click on the library, drag a segmented control over, try to drop it in the toolbar at the bottom of this view controller, and you can see, whoa, this is not at all what we want. I'm just going to go up here under the edit menu and select undo, and I'll show you how we can fix this. Now I'm not sure why we need to trick Xcode like we're about to do, but this will work. So click on library, we're going to add another toolbar, drag it over, and then just plop it in, right near the bottom of the table view is fine. Now you'll see it sort of jumps up to the top, but we're going to get rid of it in just a bit. With this temporary toolbar here, I'm going to click on library, search for segmented control, and then drag this segmented control into the new toolbar we just added. See how it shows up? And if you take a look over in the document outline, it actually puts the segmented control inside of a bar button item. Now I'm going to click this entire bar button item. You want to grab the one that's called a bar button item. There's also one right on top of it with the word item in there. You want to ignore that one. But drag the bar button item into the toolbar at the bottom of this view controller, let go, and the magic happens. It finally adds to the toolbar. Now, unfortunately, it looks like it wiped out some of the color settings that we'd had, but we'll see that this will get fixed too. Now first I'm going to click on this toolbar that we'd added before, the secondary toolbar. We don't need that, so I'm going to click on it and then I'm just going to press the delete key. It goes away. Now I'm going to click on the segmented control, and the easiest way to do that is over here in the document outline. So that's this item that says first comma second that's just below and indented inside this bar button item. And let's change this so that it's got 3 different segments. That's done right here under the attributes inspector under the segments attribute. Now we can see under that it's showing the first segment, which has got the title first in there. We're going to change that to capital A dash capital Z. We'll use that to represent sorting on the restaurant name in alphabetical order. Press return. Then we're going to select on segment. That's this pull down menu just above the title, and select segment 1. These are 0 indexed, so that's the second segment. And we're going to change that title to distance. Then we'll select segment 2, which is the third segment, and we'll put the title in there for rating. Press return. Now we got our 3 segment buttons. Now let's head down here to background, and we can select our primary color, and we see that the segment itself turns our nice Snacktacular orange. Now just below that background color we changed is the tint color. That's still the standard blue color. We want to change that to white. We don't really see any change in the segmented control, but we definitely didn't want anything showing up in that standard blue color, so we got rid of that just in case. Also, we can go up to this very top attribute called selected tint, and we'll select the white color there too. Now, if I click on the dock in this view controller, it's unusual that the bottom bar is listed as translucent toolbar. I'm not sure why that's listed in there, but I'm going to make sure that this bottom bar is listed as opaque toolbar. So here's the thing. Let's build and run. Even though things don't look like they're rendering in the colors that we want them to when we look at the main storyboard, when we actually run our app, we see that the toolbar shows up in our Snacktacular orange, even though it's not showing up properly on the storyboard. We can click the buttons, nice little animation there, everything is looking good. If we navigate back and forth from the other view controllers, our toolbars are showing up in Snacktacular orange. Great, but now let's write some code to not only change the default black color that we have here to a combination of orange when it's selected or white when it's not selected, but we'll also add a thin white color border around the segmented control too. So we're going to do this inside a spot list view controller. Make sure that you've clicked on that. And while we could write all of this code right here in viewDidLoad, why don't we break it out into another function? That'll keep our code nice and tidy and well organized. Below viewDidLoad, we'll create the function. We'll say func, and why don't we call it configure segmented control. We'll pass no values in, open and close curlies. And before we fill out this function, let's go ahead and call it right at the end of viewDidLoad. And code completion doesn't recognize this function yet, so I'm going to do a Shift Command K. I've got to stop the execution that's still going in the simulator in the back, and all of a sudden we see, yep, code completion knows about configure segmented control. Press return to select this. Now before I can configure the segmented control using code, I've got to make sure that I can refer to this in my code, which means I've got to create an IB outlet. So I'll get into side-by-side assistant editor mode. To do that, just option click on main storyboard. Then I'll control drag from my segmented control. That's showing up in the document outline as this A-Z, distance. I'm going to let that go right below my other IB outlet for the table view, and I'll give this the name sort segmented control. Always check to make sure that you've got the right type in here. Yep, it says UI segmented control, so I must have control drag from the right object. Click connect, and now I can click on the X by the main storyboard and get out of assistant editor mode. So let's start by adding the white border to the segmented control. The way we do this is refer to the sort segmented control. It has a .layer property. In here we want to refer to the border color, and look, the color is a CG color, not a UI color, so that's important. We want that border to be white, so what we're going to do is we're going to say equals UI color dot white, and then we'll say dot CG color. That will convert the UI color to a CG color. Then below that, we're going to set the width of the border that we're going to draw, so we'll say sort segmented control again, dot layer to get at the layer property, and we'll say dot border width. Code completion tells you this is the width of the layer's border, and we'll just set that equal to 1.0. Now just above this, we'll set the font colors for the segmented control, and we'll sort of work backwards here. We're going to say sort segmented control dot, and the method we want is called dot set title, and you see this one here that says set title text attributes. This is the one we want. Now code completion says that this sets the text attributes of the title for a given control state. The two states that we care about are going to be dot normal and dot selected. Dot normal is that unselected state, and in that state we want our text color to be white, and in dot selected, that's when we want it to be our Snacktacular orange color. That's the color we named primary color. Now you see how there's this attributes parameter that we need to pass in, and this looks like a dictionary. It has something called ns attributed string dot key, and then that's :any. That's a little confusing, but you can use this to pass in all sorts of properties that you need that are associated with a particular string that you're working with. Now, if you explore Apple's documentation, you will see a ton of different options. You can use this to set the font family. You can adjust advanced typography settings like kerning and ligatures. You can add a link to text. You can set the paragraph style, shadows, strike-through attributes. All we want to do here is change the foreground color for the text that's inside of our segmented control. This is how we've got to do it. Just know this little dictionary that we're working with gives you a lot more power under the hood if you ever need to return to this in a future app. So press return to accept this. Let's ignore the attributes parameter for now, but let's set the control state. I'll type in dot selected first. Then, since I want to do a similar setting for dot normal, I'll highlight this entire line, copy with a Command C, Command V to paste it below, and I'll change my dot selected to dot normal. Now here's how we set up our foreground color as an attribute, which is of this dictionary type that we can pass in. We'll say let orange font color equals, and then inside of brackets I'm going to start to type ns attributed string dot key, and .foreground color is one of the many options that's available to us. Now this is a dictionary, so it's a key value pair, sort of like in our JSON. So we'll say colon, and when we have on the left side of this colon this foreground color, on the right hand side we're expecting a color. It's going to be a UI color, so I'll type in UI color. Then I'm going to open parentheses here, and if you scroll down, we've got an option to be able to initialize a UI color with a named asset. So code completion tells us that this is how we refer to a stored named asset. That in this case means the named color set that's inside of our assets catalog. That's perfect, but do notice that this returns an optional UI color. The reason for that is if you passed in a string, but there's no color with that name in the asset catalog, you'd get back a nil. So we want to select that. We're going to pass in a string, and the string that we're going to pass in is primary color. That's that name of the Snacktacular orange color that we created. Now, if we're 100% confident that we've got our name in properly, we could just force unwrap this with an exclamation point. But you know what I'll do? I'll do 2 question marks after this for nil coalescing, and I'll pass in UI color.orange. Now down below, we're going to create the white color, and we're going to do it the same way. So I'll say let white font color equals, then in brackets, ns attributed string dot key dot foreground, and then I'll say colon, and this will just be UI color dot white. And since I'm referring to one of the built-in iOS color constants in here, it's not optional. Apple knows that a UI color dot white exists. So now what I can do is I can highlight this orange font color constant that I created, copy with the command C, and I'm just going to paste it in on top of this attributes parameter for my .selected segmented control. And then down below this, I'm going to copy the white font color constant that I just created. I'm going to paste that in so that that's the attributes that I'm passing in for my .normal sort segmented control. Now let's build and run. Again, a wild little bit of code here just to do some simple customization that we should have been able to do on the storyboard. We couldn't do it. This is your code. Now you got a chunk of code that you can leverage if you ever need to do this again in the future. But look at our app. Ho-ho! We've now got a segmented control with a color scheme that matches the rest of the app. We've got this lovely white border around it. It's 1 point in width. When a segment has a white background, its state is selected. And remember, we used our orange font color for that. When these segments are orange, those are in the normal state. That's why I use the white font color for those. Swifter, this looks magnificent. You've really got a nice UI shaping up. Hope you're feeling good about your skills. In the next video, we'll learn how to save data to the cloud. Keep at it.